Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr, and welcome back to something I like to call Stories from the Maelstrom, a recap of the day's games for this past week of real time. All right, before we head into the recaps, I just wanted to point out if you head over to baseballmaelstrom.com, you can follow all the action, of course, as always. You can see the stories, you can see the standings. I also have now put links to past real months so you can see the stories that I posted in those particular months. So you can go back and see those game summaries, I guess, or game recaps that will give you links to all of the games that way. You can see the standings, you can see the upcoming games, you can see the past scores, all of that fun stuff. And now on the top menu, you can click on this link to vote for the All-Stars for the All-Star game that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. So if we head to, if we click on that link, you can get to the page that will have the All-Star voting. Once you plug in your email address, it'll take you to the ballot page, and you'll just select one person from each starting position. If you want to see the stats, you can click on the link here to see the All-Star AL stats or the NL stats. You'll go to a page that looks something like this, which will break it down by position, and you can see the stats for the qualifiers at each position and all of the relevant stats for the American League or the National League to help you make your decisions. So I encourage you all to head over there to vote for those All-Stars, because I'll be playing the game here in about two weeks or so, I think. 2 or 3 weeks will be the All-Star break. So head over there to check that out. Now let's head over to the action. We start in Boston. Detroit was coming to town to play the Boston Splinters, the Detroit Rockets. And it was a pretty close game until the 5th inning. Boston had a 2-1 lead. Starters were David Cone for the Rockets and Gaylord Perry for the Splinters. And then in the bottom of the 5th, Boston kind of pulled away a little bit with a 3-run inning here in the 5th. Ricky Henderson led off with a single. Tony Oliva grounded out into fielder's choice. Ted Williams followed with a single. Lou Gehrig walked to load the bases, and then Harmon Killebrew hit a sac fly to center. But with 2 outs and the bases still, men on first and second at that point, Cal Ripken hit a double that with 2 RBI, scored both runners to put the Splinters up 5-1 at that point. They had a homer from Carlton Fisk the next inning. Detroit scored one of their own in the top of the 6th. And then in the 7th, against Louis Tiant, Cal Ripken came in again with another RBI, with an RBI single in the 7th against Louis Tiant. And that put them up 7-2, and that's where the final score would stand, 7-2. Gaylord Perry allowed just 2 earned runs in 7 innings, struck out 4, allowed only 7 hits. Lefty Gomez had 2 innings of relief work, and he allowed just 1 hit and 1 walk while striking out 3 himself. So a great performance by both Boston pitchers. Gaylord Perry has an ERA of 2.80, but just 3-2 to show for it. Meanwhile, David Cone, 6 innings pitched, allowed 10 hits, 6 earned runs. Louis Tiant allowed another earned run in his 2 innings of relief work. Boston takes this one 7-2. They improved to 13-9. Detroit fell to 12-11, still above 500. We head over to L.A. as the Chicago Docks took on the L.A. Dynamos. And Albert Pujols is kind of the story of this one. Even though Chicago came up short, Pujols has been struggling since joining the league. But this one, he is 3 for 5. If we look at him, He reached on second only due to an error by Joe Morgan, actually. But then in the fourth inning, he had a solo homer. He had an RBI double in the fifth. He had another double in the seventh. So he was 3 for 4 at that point. And Chicago had been, we're ahead 5-2 at one point before LA scored 3 runs in the bottom of the sixth, thanks to a Frank Robinson 3-run homer. So Frank Robinson ties it up for LA there, 5-5. 5-5 game, turned over to the relievers. In the eighth inning, the bottom of the eighth, LA scored a couple more runs. Johnny Mize had an RBI single after Roy Oswalt walked 2 batters. And then Frank Robinson hit into a fielder's choice that scored another run, put them up 7-5. Heading to the top of the ninth, Goose Gossage came in to try to close this one out. Gossage struck out Sammy Sosa, but then walked Jim Edmonds, and Albert Pujols came up with a chance to tie it with one swing, or at least get a base hit to extend things. But he then instead grounded into a game-ending double play. Even so, he was 3 for 5, which brought his average up to 243. He had 2 RBI, scored 2 runs, so a pretty productive day for him. Don Drysdale was the winning pitcher for LA. He went 8 innings. He did allow 4 earned runs, struck out 7, allowed 12 hits, quite a few hits there to Chicago. But he tops Orel Hershiser, who only went 6 innings, allowed 5 earned runs. Roy Oswalt allowed 2 earned runs in his 2 innings of relief work, and he'll pick up the loss for the Chicago Docs. Goose Gossage gets his 5th save in a scoreless 9th inning. If we look, we see that, as I said, Pujols was 3 for 5. On the winning side, we had Johnny Mize was 3 for 4 with 3 RBI. He had that 2-run double in the first and then an RBI single in the 8th. Frank Robinson was 2 for 4 with 4 RBI. He had the 3-run homer in the 6th and another RBI in the 8th on a fielder's choice. So LA improves to 12-12 and Chicago falls to 8-16. Heading to Oakland as the New York Swats face the Oakland Jacks. And this one was an amazing pitcher's duel. So Blyleven facing off against Walter Johnson. Walter Johnson had allowed just 1 run in the 3rd, thanks to back-to-back doubles from Minnie Minoso and Mickey Cochran, scoring a run there in the 3rd inning for the Oakland Jacks. And meanwhile, Bert Blyleven had a 2-hitter heading into the 9th inning, 2-hit shutout. He struck out Babe Ruth to start the 9th, but then Jimmy Fox hit a solo homer to tie it up before Blyleven retired Ken Griffey Jr. and Lou Boudreau on flyouts. So the Oakland Jacks couldn't score in the bottom of the 9th. Walter Johnson's still in that one. Johnson looked a little shaky. He allowed a single to Minnie Minoso, a 2-out single to Minnie Minoso, walked Mickey Cochran, but then Robin Yount grounded out to end the inning. Took us to extra innings with a 1-1 tie. Both starting pitchers going the distance to that point and turned it over to their bullpens. Ted Lyons for the Oakland Jacks had a 1-2-3 10th inning. And New York couldn't get anything going. Then in the bottom of the 10th, Red Faber came in for the Swats and promptly allowed Rod Carew to single. And then Joe DiMaggio hit a 2-run walk-off homer to end the game and to win it for Oakland 3-1. Overall, Red Faber picks up his 3rd loss. He actually started in the started the season in the starting rotation before being relegated to the bullpen. He allowed that 2-run homer and didn't have any had no innings of work since he didn't get anybody out. His ERA is 13.15, very high. New York has really struggled without a solid bullpen to speak of. They don't even have a true closer, actually. Satchel Paige is closing games for the New York Swats, and he's not really a true closer, but he's pretty much the best they have in the bullpen. And that's really hurt them this year. The Oakland Jacks improved to 12-11. New York falls to 9-15. They really had a chance to win this one. Walter Johnson had his best start of the year, allowing just that 1 earned run in 9 innings. But Burt Blyleven really should have won this one, but made that one mistake in the 9th to Jimmy Fox. Even so, allowed just 3 hits in 9 innings and 1 earned run. His ERA falls to 2.60. Next, and finally, we come to Houston, where the St. Louis Wizards come to town to face the Houston Hoots in the Astrodome. Houston had taken 2 of 3 from St. Louis so far in the series. And this one is all came down to some clutch hitting, I guess, or lack of clutch hitting for the Houston Hoots. They had every opportunity to win this one, but couldn't quite pull it off. St. Louis had John Smoltz on the mound facing Bob Gibson for Houston, the namesake of the team. And Gibson was pitched well, okay, but wasn't, he was allowing base runners every inning, almost every inning. Did allow 9 hits in his 8 innings of work, but just 3 earned runs. The teams traded runs early on. St. Louis scoring in the very first inning, thanks to Sam Musial's RBI triple with 2 outs, scoring Tony Gwynn. Meanwhile, Duke Snider hit a solo shot in the second to tie the game against John Smoltz. In the 6th inning, Houston had a chance to pull ahead when Jeff Bagwell walked, but then was caught stealing second. Billy Williams and Ryan Sandberg followed with singles, which would have scored Bagwell. Duke Snider flew out. Hank Aaron walked to load the bases, but then Mel Ott flew out to end the threat and end the inning for Houston in the 6th. Heading into the 8th, St. Louis actually pulled ahead, scoring a couple of runs on Bob Gibson there. Ted Simmons led off with a double. Tony Gwynn walked. Stan Musial grounded out to third, but advanced both runners. And then Larry Walker had an RBI single there. There was an error on, that error was on a throwing error, I believe, on Pop Lloyd at short in that case. And then Ron Santo hit a single to follow that, so second run would have scored either way. So St. Louis took a 3-1 lead into the bottom of the 8th. Billy Williams hit a solo shot to lead off the inning and make it 3-2 against John Smoltz, who then allowed a single to Ryan Sandberg before Fergie Jenkins was called in to hopefully limit the damage, and he did just that. Struck out Duke Snider. Hank Aaron did single, but then Mel Ott dribbled one back to the pitcher, and Gary Carter flew out to end the threat. In the 9th, Hoyt Wilhelm came in for Houston and struck out the side in the 9th, kept things close, but St. Louis turned things over to Bruce Sutter in the bottom of the 9th, and Sutter retired Houston 1-2-3 to pick up his 8th save of the season, league-leading 8th save of the season. Again, Houston had a chance there a couple of times, but couldn't quite close the deal. They couldn't come through in the clutch there, and so they lose this one 3-2. The Wizards improved to a league best 19-5. Houston falls to 9-15, even though they did split the series 2-2 against the Wizards. They come up short in this one. John Smoltz gets the win. It's his second win of the season. He's 2-0. Allowed just 2 earned runs in 7 innings of work. Bob Gibson picks up the loss. He's 2-4 now. Allowed just 3 earned runs in 8 innings. Hasn't really been too dominant in this season. So, with all of that said, let's look at some stats. Let's look at some leaders. And again, if we come over here to the leaders, we see the batting leaders. Ted Williams still is hitting over 400. He's 403, best average in the American League. Tony Gwynn now with the best average in the National League. He's 381. But Ted Williams leading in most of the offensive categories. He's leading in batting average, slugging, on base, leading tie for lead in home runs. He and Ken Griffey Jr. both have 8 in the American League. In the National League, as I said, Tony Gwynn with the best batting average, 381, and the best on base percentage in the National League. In terms of homers, Stan Musial and Eddie Matthews both have 8 homers in the National League. So they're both doing well. There's a 3-way tie for RBI at 25. A-Rod has 25, as well as Ted Williams, and then Stan Musial with 25 in the National League. So pretty good hitting there. If we look at the pitching leaders, we see Robin Roberts still on top in the National League and the league overall with a 1.85 ERA. Tom Seaver is second. Sandy Koufax is third, tied with Juan Marichal there, and then Steve Carlton. So 3 of the starting rotation, St. Louis Wizards starting rotation there in the top 5. Bert Blyleven leading the American League in ERA with a 2.60 ERA. And this last game was just dominating there for him as well. We see Bruce Sutter leading with saves with 8. In fact, the top 4 save leaders are all in the National League. We have to go down to number 5, well, actually a tie for 4, I guess, with 5 saves from Tom Henke with Detroit. American League, not as many save opportunities out there because of the high scoring nature of the game. In fact, if we go back to the homepage and we take a look, we'll look at the standings first. Boston's still on top, 13-9. Detroit a game and a half back, as well as Oakland both a game and a half back at 12-11. And the National League side, St. Louis just is dominating, 19-5. LA's the next closest team at 12-12. They're 7 games back. But overall, if we look at the overall at the American League, we see the American League much better offense. Overall, a 290 average batting average of 5.40 ERA compared to the National League 259 batting average and 4.28 ERA. So again, it's normalized a little bit, but still the American League is definitely has more offense than the National League. National League is dominated by those pitchers on the St. Louis Wizards most of all. So it'll be interesting to see as we head into the All-Star game which of these leagues comes out on top. So that's where we will, I believe, leave things. Once again, head over to vote for those All-Stars, All-Star starters. That game will be played. I'll record that game and have it up, a playthrough of the All-Star game for everybody to view on the channel. I'm doing a couple of other videos in the works on base running, based on the real 2022 Major League Baseball data. So if you're interested in that, check that out. I have one coming up on runner advancement on flyouts, so including sac flies. So if you're interested in that, be checking that out. If you like this kind of content, you like following the league, please consider subscribing to the channel, and just helps more people see it. Consider liking the video, of course. And until next time, the next video will probably be that sac fly and flyout video. But I try to put out one of these stories from the Maelstrom every week, so be following that. In a couple weeks, we'll have the All-Star break, and we'll have some more interesting content there too. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a great evening.